The reason that we become depressed and anxious and so on and so forth is because the body's inability to create neurotransmitters. The herbicide glyphosate blocks the Shikimate pathway, and by doing so also inhibits our ability to create our neurotransmitters.
What's up, Skullbells TV? Personal question. Are you depressed? Not the question that we normally kick things off with on this channel, I know, but depression is a real thing that I've experienced, and a lot of the people that I'm working with deal with depression too, unfortunately. So, if you're looking for changes that you can make in your diet to optimize your mental health and well-being, there are a handful of foods that you should definitely not be eating. And after my last couple check-ins with my bodybuilding coach, Richard Smith from Wales, and following what he's having me eat, I now understand the science of the Shikimate pathway, which I thought was a total joke actually when he brought it up at first, but it's a real thing, and how it relates to protein and amino acid metabolism. So I'm hoping that this video will make sense to you, and this recording with Rich went way over my head the first time that we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and so I've gone over it several times since, and I've taken a deep dive into this topic and just wanted to provide a little bit of context before passing it off to the legend. So the Shikimate pathway is essential in obtaining nutrients from meat, specifically the amino acids phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan. Okay, so the confusing part is that it doesn't actually exist inside a human being, but it does exist within our gut microbiome in the form of bacteria. So you're going to find conflicting evidence if you do like a Google search and try to see if the Shikimate pathway actually exists in humans or not. It does, but it doesn't at the same time. So if that makes sense. So this will alleviate a very common root cause of depression and anxiety if we can get to the bottom of this. Okay, so a couple terms that we need to be familiar with is glyphosate is the first one. Glyphosate is an herbicide that is applied to the leaves of plants, is what it's used for, to kill both broadleaf plants and grasses. And the sodium salt from glyphosate is used to regulate plant growth and ripen specific crops. So it's something that we use a lot here in Montana in the United States, right? So, or at least our neighbors do. I don't. I'm in the office meetings most of the day. My landlord probably does. One of the most widely used herbicides today since 1974. This stuff, glyphosate. So what it does is it blocks the Shikimate pathway that is technically not found in humans, but really is because it exists within the bacteria that are within our gut, and that's very, very important in digesting all foods, specifically amino acids. So foods that contain glyphosate are things that you would be really surprised on. Carrots, soy products, vegetable oils, breakfast cereals, oat products, crackers, chickpea flour, pizza, lentils, and alfalfa. So I guess that means that if you're hooked on alfalfa flavored ice cream or a cereal or something weird like that, then you should probably stop. So to be completely honest, I actually wanted to show some pictures of like food from our pantry that might contain stuff like this. And my awesome wife does most of our grocery shopping and makes sure that all of our food is like totally clean and free from that stuff. So Rich and I believe that glyphosate containing plant foods have no place in a proper human diet whatsoever for someone who wants to maximize muscle protein synthesis and mental well-being. I am continuing to build and maintain muscle just as well, if not better, than 5 years earlier when I was regularly consuming carbs and foods that were high in glyphosates. And I believe that one of the reasons that I'm able to do this naturally is because I've cut out all possible food sources that permanently that could be filled with this toxic BS that the government doesn't care if you, because the government does not care if you eat it because a patient cured is a customer lost, right? And there's a lot of money in medicine, unfortunately. So that being said, here is the one and only Richard Anthony Smith. Question from an anonymous gentleman. We shall refer to this to him as Eddie. Last week, Mary Lou and I, she shared some helpful insights on anxiety and PTSD, and I was just wondering if I could pull your opinion on this topic. He's ex-Army, recently got off of anxiety medications, and those cause lots of damage to your lots of permanent damage to your brain. And so he's recently got off of those and choosing to live a life drug-free, medicinally drug-free, and using his diet to troubleshoot these conditions. So I'm just wondering what advice that you might have for this gentleman.
How far is this gentleman into his journey,
Oh,
Cole?
yeah. He's a registered nurse. He is no dummy. He's actually been a carnivore for quite a bit longer than I have.
Okay, fantastic. So,
and he's quite a bit more strict than I am. Even I would say that he's probably about as strict as you are in terms of like how often he deviates from his diet. Yeah.
so is he already off these drugs or trying to wean off?
Off and has been off for quite some time.
And still suffers with severe depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues.
Yeah. PTSD. I don't know what he saw. I don't want to know.
Yeah. So look, it's a strange one because generally when someone's been living the lifestyle for this long, these things tend to start to clear up. And I'll explain why really briefly. But the reason that we become depressed and anxious and so on and so forth is because the body's inability to create neurotransmitters, things like dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, so on and so forth. Dopamine and serotonin are neurotransmitters that allow us to feel happy, and we need to create them naturally. We're hardwired to chase these. If we're not creating them naturally, then we look for sweet fixes to elicit the same response.
Because Mary Lou and I were just talking about this last week. So like a natural way to get dopamine is to get it through norepinephrine, right? So you get norepinephrine when you do something you don't want to do. So like my workout today, I'm training back, right? Didn't want to train back, so I did 3 sets of back exercises, even though I didn't want to do it. Okay, so it's 15 minutes of doing something I don't want to do. That creates, correct me if I'm wrong, that creates norepinephrine, that creates dopamine. Okay, so that works for me. So somebody that's depressed, like, can't do that.
So, well, why can't they? You know, if go for a run.
That's what I'm asking. I'm sorry. I guess that's what I'm asking you. I guess what I'm asking you is why would somebody like this have the inability to create dopamine and those hormones that you're describing?
So from a typical standpoint, and this is highly generic, the average lifestyle consumes lots of compounds that block the absorption and ability to create these cofactors. So, for example, our neurotransmitters are created from tyrosine, tryptophan, and phenylalanine. They create our neurotransmitters, but there are cofactors involved, things like zinc, iron, magnesium, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, vitamin B3, so on and so forth. These are compounds that can be blocked by as much as 100% if we co-consume them with things like phytic acid or lectins. So a standard diet that contains lots of carbohydrates and nuts and seeds and vegetable matter is going to block and hinder the body's ability to do so. A double kick in the teeth is many of these compounds are treated with a compound called glyphosate, the herbicide glyphosate. Glyphosate blocks the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway is responsible for the production of neurotransmitters. So when we block the shikimate pathway, we block the amino acids, our aromatic amino acids, which allow us to create our neurotransmitters. 95% of the neurotransmitters are created in the gut. So when we block this pathway, we lose our ability to create most of our neurotransmitters. In short, when we consume a standard diet, we're in this state of being depressed and anxious generally. So we reach for a sugary treat, because when we consume sugar will elicit an insulin response. Insulin will drive or pull all of the amino acids out of the blood, except for tryptophan, leaving tryptophan available for synthesis into serotonin. And this will give us, that's the reward pathway. So serotonin will give us that reward feeling. Dopamine, it's a similar thing with dopamine. It will give us a dopamine release, making us feel good. But every time we do it, we downregulate the dopamine receptor, which means we need to do it more and more. This is why when we consume carbs or chocolate, sugar, so on and so forth, we get this release, but then it's short-lived. So now we're in a state where we've downregulated the body's ability to create naturally, and the only way to do this and obtain this again is by consuming said compound to release it again. And we're constantly in this state while constantly downregulating the body's natural ability to do so. So removing these toxic compounds like glyphosate, like the grains, carbohydrates and the phytic acids and all the other anti-nutrients that we consume on a standard diet will allow us to begin the journey in regards to functioning and creating these neurotransmitters naturally. So that's the first protocol. Now, this gentleman is already doing those things. Now, that said, I mean, the compounds that he's consumed prior to this have obviously caused damage to these systems. They've obviously caused downregulation. There are things that we can do. Vitamin D is fantastic. We need to get out in the sun. Vitamin D isn't the only reason that we get out in the sun, by the way. Getting out in the sun and being exposed to UVA and UVB rays will elicit a response in regards to what am I thinking of here now? I'm not losing my trail of thought. The vasodilator, nitric oxide. So it'll increase nitric oxide, potent vasodilator, and that will increase longevity and it will make us feel good. So we feel a lot better. We feel healthy. Getting out in the sun, exposing ourselves to UVA and UVB rays through the eyes early in the morning and late in the evening are going to elicit positive responses. You could try vitamin D supplementation, but I'm not a big fan of vitamin D supplementation. High choline foods.
Why? Neither is he, by the way. He says it's not near as bioavailable as what's in animal products, and so it's not even worth your time taking it from a capsule. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And look, it's the reason the reason we take vitamin D
probably can't hurt you, but don't expect it to fix your vitamin D deficiency.
So think of it this way.
Because I started tripling my vitamin D dose, and my doctor's like, "You're still deficient in vitamin C." And I'm like, or vitamin D. And I'm like, "How's that even possible?"
Yeah. And look,
okay,
why do we take vitamin D? It's because healthy people have high vitamin D. But healthy people have high vitamin D. Vitamin D doesn't make you healthy. So what we see is these people who are metabolically healthy, their vitamin D is elevated.
It's like, are you happy because you're grateful, or are you grateful because you're happy? Okay.
Yeah. And we can't become a good level of vitamin D is a sign of someone who is metabolically healthy. We can't become metabolically healthy by taking vitamin D. Again, I would say that there's probably no harm, and there probably are reasons not to supplement with vitamin D, but I don't believe it's the magic elixir that people think it is. Yeah. If we are consuming enough, there are times when maybe you could take vitamin D if you weren't consuming animal proteins. If you are living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle, you do not need to supplement with vitamin D, in my opinion. And we see this from civilizations that live in areas that are not exposed to lots of sun, in the Antarctic and things. These people have very good levels of vitamin D despite having very little sun, because they consume lots of animal proteins with natural fats. Vitamin A, D, and K are fat-soluble vitamins. We need a protein with the fat. If we consume protein or fat, then we allow the body to absorb and assimilate these nutrients efficiently. Eat as nature intended. I don't see very much sun, and my vitamin D levels are fantastic. I'm stuck in my cave most of the day. That is not healthy. I am trying to make a conservative effort to get out into the sun and to do more grounding and to do all of these things, but life gets in the way. I'm in the office podcasting and consulting and doing other things inside this box, which I need to break out of. Again, back to my boxes. But my point is,
I love your box analogy.
My box analogy, but
I think you've already said it on this show, so I won't make you repeat it.
Yeah, I won't go through it again. But it hasn't hindered my ability to create vitamin D and allow me to benefit from vitamin D. The reason the vitamin D is increased when we're out in the sun is because it's synthesized from UVB rays in the skin, and it's done so to act as a sunscreen to protect us from the rays. So vitamin D is a sunscreen. The benefits of vitamin D mostly come from the nitric oxide. The nitric oxide, that's what leads to the benefits that we think the vitamin D has given us. That's not to say that vitamin D doesn't confer a benefit, because it does. It helps us with calcium and so on and so forth. It's a calcium mobilizer, and it's incredibly important to combat things like rickets. But if you consume enough animal proteins, I don't believe that we need to supplement with vitamin D. It's not the magic elixir that we've been led to believe. So yeah, I agree. But look, I think that his receptors have been downregulated. I would look at consuming maybe coconut oil. And I know he's carnivore, and that may go against the grain a little bit, but it's very high in lauric acid. Lauric acid is going to increase cholesterol. That's going to allow higher testosterone and vitamin D. That could be the key to starting the change in regards to the processes. He could do this through lamb, so I don't know if he's consuming lamb. But as you say, getting out and doing things that you don't want to do, go for a run, achieve these goals, because these do elicit these responses. Beyond diet, there are lots of levers that we can pull.
So many good ideas, man. I'm gonna share all this with him on Friday when we check in. Thanks so much, dude. If we can make some progress with his PTSD, that'll be absolutely incredible. You used a word that I had no idea what it means, like a million times, man. So I looked it up on Wikipedia right now, and I put it in the description of the show notes. All right, and so the Shikimate pathway. It's a shikimic acid pathway is a 7-step metabolic pathway used by bacteria, fungi, algae, some protozoans, and plants for the biosynthesis of folates and aromatic amino acids. Okay, this pathway is not found in mammals.
That is incorrect. That is absolutely incorrect. So it is found in mammals.
Really?
I can share my screen and show you something if you have time to take a look at it. I don't.
Oh yeah. This is on Wikipedia. That is exactly what it says. This pathway is not found in mammals.
No, that is absolutely incorrect. That is incorrect.
That's the case. Wikipedia is wrong. Wouldn't be the first time.
So I'm gonna see if I can find something on a presentation that I've given recently at a conference that I attended. And you can Google search this and you can find this. So if I start slideshow from current slide, and I know that we'll talk this through to the podcast listeners.
Yeah.
Am I sharing the correct screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so this is the Shikimate pathway. So you can see Shikimate, then Shikimate 3-phosphate, and then it comes into basically the aromatic amino acids at the bottom, which are tryptophan, phenylalanine, and tyrosine, which are the aromatic amino acids that I mentioned earlier, which go on to create our neurotransmitters. This is a pathway found in humans, and it's the pathway that is found in the gut. So this is the pathway to the bacteria in the gut. The Shikimate pathway, the input to the Shikimate pathway is something called PEP, phosphoryl pyruvate. If you look at PEP, phosphoryl pyruvate, you will see that this is the input to the Shikimate pathway. This exists in the human body. This is a study. What this says is the herbicide glyphosate inhibits the Shikimate pathway of the synthesis of amino acids such as phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan. However, how much so it goes on to say the uncertainty, unsure. But when you look in regards to the study, what this basically says is the herbicide glyphosate blocks the Shikimate pathway, and by doing so, also inhibits our ability to create our neurotransmitters. And this is the study there. If the guys want to check this out, and then we go on to the neurotransmitters there. I mean, this study just keeps going on and on and on in regards to neurotransmitters, how it affects methylation and so on and so forth. But the Shikimate pathway is found in the human body. A quick Google search will tell you phosphoryl pyruvate into the Shikimate pathway in human beings exists via the bacteria in our gut. This is why we treat plant material with glyphosate, because we're led to believe that it doesn't affect the human beings, because we're told the Shikimate pathway doesn't exist in man, but it does. It exists through the bacteria in our gut. And again, just to reiterate, this is how we create 95% of the neurotransmitters in the human body. So therefore, to block the Shikimate pathway is detrimental, not just to neurotransmitter production, but methylation. Methylation is essential for life. So we need to methylate. We can't live without methylation. These are things that quite literally block our body's ability to live. You know, yet 95% of it isn't enough to cause death, obviously, because people who consume these compounds are still alive. But let's flick that on the head and go back to what we were saying in regards to how old the human body can live. Well, if we think that 100 is old, we only think it's old because we're consuming these toxic compounds, which are taking all of these decades off our life. Restrict eating this shit, and you will live to be a centenarian. You know, it's as simple as that.
You just said it, man. You just said it. Yeah. 99% of people's health problems would just go away if you just stop eating sugar, like whatever disease you're dealing with, whatever. But how many people do you know that will actually cut sugar and just stop eating it? I can count on basically I don't know, probably both hands the amount of people that I personally know that have made that decision. And I don't know about you, but did you ever make a decision to cut out carbs permanently? Or was it like after a couple of years you're like, I don't know, I could do this the rest of my life, and you were just like, yeah, no reason to put him back in.
I did, and we'll get on to that now. I've just decided to share this screen. Am I sharing a screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, so it says there the Shikimate pathway, also known as Shikimate acid pathway, is a 7-step metabolic process that occurs in humans, and other life forms. So there it is. You could see it in that simple.
So Wikipedia's got to get their shit together. Don't go there free.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. It was the first thing that came up. I just wanted to see what the Shikimate pathway was.
So Shikimate pathway in humans does exist, and glyphosate blocks the Shikimate pathway.
Wow.
Let's just type in for a bit of fun. Let's type glyphosate in there and see what.
This is educational for people to listen, man. I mean, like you hear like do your own research, do your own research. Like it's easier said than done.
So glyphosate, a broad spectrum herbicide that inhibits the Shikimate pathway. So I mean, it says in plants there, but I mean, if we type in, let's look at research that says humans. Glyphosate, a strong impact on bacterial species in human microbiome. So it's shown, studies have shown that perturbations in human gut microbiome are connected to many diseases and go on and so forth. But glyphosate is not safe to use because it damages the Shikimate pathway. I mean, it's there in black and white. You know, you just need to word things in a different way to find these through Chat GBT and your search engines, because these are geared up to push a specific narrative. The Shikimate pathway exists in the human body. We've just seen it. You know, the AI software on there has clearly just shown that the Shikimate pathway exists in humans, yet Wikipedia claim it doesn't.
Hey everybody, Coach Colt. Hope you're enjoying the video, and I really hope it's making sense. And so this was recorded a couple weeks ago, right before I flew out to the Open Natural to guest pose. And after getting back, one of the first things that I did was, of course, check in with my coach and tell him how everything went. And so he picked up the topic from here, and we're going to get right back into the Shikimate pathway. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand about the Shikimate pathway is it doesn't exist in our gut. It doesn't exist in a human as an animal. It exists, but it does exist within our gut in the form of our gut microbiome in microorganisms. So that's why when you when you go online, like when you do a Google search to see if the Shikimate pathway exists in humans or not, it does, but it doesn't at the same time. So for our purposes, it really does, and we need to consider that with the foods that we eat. And so when we eat something that's high protein, that's a good source of protein, like some raw beef, which is probably like your best source of protein, best bioavailable source of protein, and you consume a plant that has glyphosate in it, like a carrot or like seed oils. There's a whole bunch of foods actually. Alfalfa, that's one of them. I was I was like, who's eating alfalfa? Whatever, but yeah, like alfalfa flavored ice cream or something maybe. But when you consume plants that have glyphosate and that have these other compounds in them, it blocks the Shikimate pathway, and so you can't absorb your amino acids, and so then you're getting you're getting depression-like symptoms, and you're not recovering from your workouts as much because your body can't metabolize those amino acids as effectively. So in order to increase muscle protein synthesis, you can increase your protein, or you can consume less plants that are inhibiting your body's ability to get the most from to get the most from the meat. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I kind of am I understanding I'm understanding what we said last time fairly well, and is that kind of what you're talking about with these compounds here and like a product like this, consuming this every day?
So different pathway. There's many pathways within the body, but the Shikimate pathway, as you say, exists in the bacteria in the gut. The gut is responsible for making 95% of our neurotransmitters. So if we block this pathway, then we are massively hindering the body's ability to create neurotransmitters, which are created from the 3 aromatic amino acids. And as you say, when we consume those, if we're blocking that process, then we are unable to go to the next step and create our neurotransmitters. If we don't create our neurotransmitters, then things like serotonin, melatonin, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, so on and so forth, these can be blocked and inhibited, which can lead to, as you say, not just a lack in muscle protein synthesis, but depression, anxiety, mental health problems, so on and so forth. So when we remove compounds that have been sprayed with glyphosate, then we have the ability to access and perform the Shikimate pathway. The Shikimate pathway also is the output for fructose metabolism. So the Shikimate pathway becomes blocked if we consume glyphosate and if we consume excessive amounts of fructose. So the output to fructose absorption leads to fructose buildup, and that leads to fatty liver and increased triglycerides and so on and so forth. So this is why, consuming this compound is, and it's glyphosate gets the bad rap. There are lots of other compounds out there. Now, glyphosate is a herbicide.
Wow. So, sorry, just to make sure I'm tracking with you. Okay, so you go to a supplement store and you buy a protein shake, and you have anything that has fructose added into it. So that could be like a fruit juice, or that could be just fructose as a sweetener. Okay, it says you have 25 grams of protein on the label. Obviously, this is nowhere near accurate. This is a very, very rough guess at best, and there's no way to test this. But do you think it's kind of the same as just getting a protein shake that doesn't have a sweetener, but you're only getting 20 grams of protein because the fructose is robbing your ability to get the most out of that protein?
Yes, there are lots of other ingredients in the mix also. So if we look at glyphosate, which is a herbicide, that gets the bad rap, but there are lots of other herbicides, for example, which are being used. But the interesting thing is that plants contain 99.9% of the toxic compounds that we consume are found in the plant itself. So herbicides can contribute to something like 0.1%. I think, and that's going, but it may be 1%. I can't remember if it's 1 or 0.1, but it's incredibly low. So the vast percentage of these toxic compounds are actually found in the plant itself. So yes, glyphosate is a massive contributing factor, but plants contain anti-nutrients naturally in the form of things like lectins and phytic acids and so on and so forth. Flavonoids also will block, the production of specific hormones. We've got sulforaphane and things which will block the absorption of iodine at the thyroid. Flavonoids prevent the absorption of things like vitamin C and reduce net protein utilization. They're also endocrine disruptors, so they block the body's ability to create hormones, which is obviously something that's really important.
Hey Colt, good morning. Just finished a great workout here. I listen to podcasts when I'm working out, and I'll tell you what, I love Carnivore Coaches Corner, one of my favorite podcasts. I listen to it every time there's an episode. It moves up the tops of my queue when there's one out, and just love it, just love what's going on there. As far as the carnivore diet, I got to tell you, I've been carnivore now for almost 6 years. Keto for, I guess it's almost 7 years total between keto and then carnivore. Carnivore has changed my life. I had so many issues with everything from blood pressure to issues with prostate cancer and on and on and on. I could make a long list of all the things that were wrong with this old body. But at 66, I'm setting PRs all the time in the gym. And all that comes because of being carnivore. I'm convinced it's changed my workouts, it's changed my life.